When it comes to exploring the world, adventure touring bikes are the way to go, especially if you don't want to be confined to paved roads. So for this test, we've brought 7 of the biggest and baddest adventure touring bikes on the market. We've got the Yamaha Super Tenere ES, the Ducati Multistrada 1260S, Suzuki V-Strom 1000 XT, and then 4 of the biggest heavy hitters, the ones behind me. In order, we've got the BMW R1200GS Adventure, the Honda Africa Twin Adventure Sports, the Triumph Tiger 1200 XCA, and then finally, the KTM 1290 Super Adventure R. So for all these bikes, we've got the manufacturers to provide us with the wire-wheeled versions, except for the Ducati Multistrada. The reason there is because, well, we originally asked for the Multistrada Enduro, but Ducati didn't have one available, so it was either the 1260 or nothing, and we brought that one instead. Like we said, all the bikes have wire wheels except for the Ducati. We also asked the manufacturers to put any sort of protective equipment they wanted to, because we do intend on going off-road with these bikes. So there's crash bars and bash plates because you never know what might happen. So enough with me jibber-jabbering. We're gonna go ride on the street. We're gonna go ride here in the dirt in the beautiful Southern Sierras. And with that, let's go ride. So you know what I said about that crash protection? Sometimes things don't always go as planned. Ryan, should I tell them or will you?
I can, yeah. So I think what we learned on this trip was, you know, you can never have too much protection on a bike that's, you know, north of 550 pounds, somewhere around there.
Oh! You all right?
It's always best to have as much as possible.
Oh, oh, shit.
You know, because if you're on a sandy trail, whether you've been on it before and you scouted it the weekend before, things can happen. You can auger yourself into some sand and end up slipping out and cracking an engine case open on a route, spilling oil all over the trail.
Oh, there we go.
Jesus. Yeah, the front knifed into the sand and the whole thing kind of spun around, and right where the skid plate ends, the engine sticks out just a little bit, and there's a root in the middle of the trail that took care of that pretty quickly. And out went its lifeblood, the oil all over the trail. Sorry, Mother Nature. Sorry, Honda. My bad.
Okay, yeah, so I saw you picking wood out of the DCT, so that's not like the second clutch that
no,
Honda
actually
uses.
it wasn't.
It's not made of wood.
No, it's not. And the DCT is actually on the other side, so that was the stator I was picking wood out of. Those kind of things can happen on these bikes. So moral of the story, whether it's OEM parts or the aftermarket, you should protect your adventure bike. And I also want to say thank you to Honda for supplying us with our second Africa Twin for this test, and I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I guess that was a long way of saying that our dirt day turned into a salvage operation. Because having our one absent staffer, John Burns, drive through the SoCal traffic to Honda HQ, pick up a second Africa Twin, and drive late into the night to rescue us wasn't enough. The gods of fate thought it would be cute to leave a little gift for us in the rear tire of our freshly delivered Africa Twin Adventure Sports.
What the hell, it's just a damn good thing I happen to be coming by with an extra Africa Twin on back of my borrowed Tacoma.
God damn it.
Mike, whoever you are, thanks, man. You're a lifesaver. There you go.
Hey, new, don't push it up.
It was only supposed to be a 3-hour tour.
A 3-hour tour.
That trail started getting rough.
Africa Twin was bust.
Yeah.
I try to take one of these things off. I try to let the kids go on their own, and this is what happens. They keep calling me back to rescue them all the time. Can you go get the extra Africa Twin and bring it to us? It's all right. It's okay. It's all in a day's work.
And so we've decided to break this test up into 2 parts. One part being the street component, which we're going to discuss today, and the next part to be a dirt component with real dirt tires.
You were asking for it, so we're gonna bring it to you. But while we're here, and while we're still on the topic of the Africa Twin, Ryan, I know you've just, put your head down in shame about what happened to the bike, but why don't you tell us what you think about the Honda on the roads anyway?
Yeah, the Africa Twin's a great bike. It's fun on the road. It handles well. You can definitely feel the 21-inch front tire on, twisty roads. And in this company, it comes in a little underpowered, 85 horsepower, 67 pound-feet of torque. Gets it done in the dirt. The suspension feels great in the dirt, but on the roads, it really handles pretty well. I think the only thing for me, the 21-inch front tire, you can really feel. And I'm 5'8", and with this seat height and just this seating position, the top of the windshield is directly in my line of sight, and it drives me crazy. So that's how I feel about the Africa Twin on the road.
It's important to note too that Honda supplied us with the DCT version of the Africa Twin. Obviously, you think adventure bikes, you think, well, I want a clutch, right? Well, Honda is really set to prove that the DCT is really good and maybe more so capable than the clutch traditional version. On the roads anyway, I think we could all agree that the DCT works pretty darn well. We have a guest tester here, John Nave, replacing John Burns for this test. What did you think of the Honda, and especially the DCT?
I'll tell you what, I was really surprised how good the DCT was on the road. I was able to try all the different settings, and it's pretty seamless for those that like automatic transmissions. In the sport mode, it was really aggressive, had a nice crisp shift. So, and then I on the paved sections, I really enjoyed the drive mode. It was like driving an automatic transmission bike. I'm sure for some people they'll like it. It's not my cup of tea. The sport mode was really fun. It was very intuitive.
Yeah, like John was saying, the sport mode definitely is more intuitive. It allows you to rev higher, and it also doesn't shift as quickly for you. Like if you do happen to rev it out, it just kind of stays in that gear. Whereas with the drive mode, it almost shifts a little bit too quick. You get going, and then by the time you're doing 25 miles an hour, you're almost already in 4th gear. It's just like bah, 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 bah. But the DCT does work really well. Like John was saying, if you're trying to ride aggressively, like in sport mode, coming into a corner, you can bang it down 2 gears. There's a little thumb shifter, and then for downshifting, and then a little trigger for upshifting, and it rev matches perfectly. It just bam, bam, and then you can, without upsetting the chassis, and you can really ride it quite aggressively. But there will be some guys, myself included, that would probably prefer it with the traditional clutch and gear shift lever. The DCT definitely works great.
Let's move on then to the rest of the bikes here, and since Brent, you're already talking, what are some highlights of this entire test for you?
The KTM definitely stood out a lot to me. I really did like the motor. It's a fantastic motor. It's a 1290. It makes great power all across the range, and even for a V-twin, it's kind of crazy how much you can rev it out. It just kind of keeps going. For me, being more of a dirt guy, it really just felt like a giant dirt bike with a lot of power, but with like all-day touring bike comfort. The Triumph is another fantastic road bike. It can, you can log miles on this thing all day long. There's tons of options to keep you comfortable. The windshield is great. It really deflects a lot of wind, and it goes up and down. The Ducati, hardcore road bike to the max. Off-road, maybe it doesn't work as well for the light kind of dirt travel we did, but in the road, man, you can really carve up the corners. And then the V-Strom, the Suzuki back there, that was the sleeper bike on this shootout. It really opened up a lot of eyes. It didn't do anything the best, but it didn't do anything the worst by any means either. and we all really enjoyed riding it. I mean, the motor character was fantastic. It was really smooth and really impressed by it, to be honest with you.
Speaking of the V-Strom, we have another guest tester with us, our dear friend Scott Rousseau. Scott, you were gushing about the V-Strom earlier. Why don't you tell the viewers what you think of it?
Well, I think like Brent said, it really caught me by surprise. You know, I can categorize these bikes in basically two categories, even though they're all in the same class. And there's the bikes that, to me, I don't care what the scale says, they feel really heavy. Some of them feel really tall because of their seat heights, which I'm going to guess without looking at the spec sheet are somewhere in the 30-inch range. And, you know, you have to hang me upside down in a closet for an hour before I'll like touch 5'7". So, you know, inseam is important. You know, seat heights are important, and thus how a bike feels and how it handles in low speed conditions is important. And there are some bikes that were really impressive in that respect. I think, obviously, the KTM, like Brent said, has a real slim dirt bike feel. It's a great bike, lots of power. The Honda Africa Twin, same thing. You know, it's got more of a dirt bike-ish feel. But really, the Suzuki impressed me. I mean, for the price, $15,145, as we're testing it, that's a smoking deal for a bike in this category. It has a great engine. It may not be the most, you know, powerful off the bottom, but it's just got a real linear flow to it. It's easy to ride. It's got a, you know, comfortable seat height. It handles great, low speed conditions, good suspension. That bike really impresses me. But every time I come to one of these, I can't get away from the fact that there's a bellwether bike in this group that we always have to mention and acknowledge and compare to all these other bikes, regardless of where it finishes, and that's that R1200GS. That's an amazing motorcycle. It's, you know, kind of the grandfather of this category, and that bike really acquitted itself well today, despite its size and its weight. It's, you know, it's got a low center of gravity with that Boxer twin engine, and the suspension works really well. The telelever setup on the front end does a good job of controlling dive and pitch. Great brakes, shifts really well. It's got that new TFT screen that really impresses me. Like I said, if I had a satellite dish, I would be watching TV going down the road. So, really impressive bike. Those are the two bikes, honestly, that there were bikes here that I expected would do well, but the Suzuki and BMW really made an impression on me as just how well they performed in the category.
So Evans, what about you? Some highlights?
One of the highlights for me was my surprise at how much controversy the Super Tenere stirred up. I think we were pretty much evenly divided, maybe a little bit going towards the negative side on the bike. It isn't the heaviest bike here by any means. I think it's the third lightest.
Almost second, actually. It's only 4 pounds heavier than the Multistrada.
So despite that, it feels really heavy. It's the way it carries its weight. And so I had an instance today where we were doing a U-turn and I muffed my clutch feathering and stalled the bike. Now I didn't fall down, but I had to be rescued because I couldn't pick it up either, just because of the way the weight was. I was stuck holding it until Troy came and grabbed it, which seemed like an hour. But you know, I think we're divided on the exhaust note. I really like the exhaust note of this engine, but other people have commented that they don't like it at all, that they think it sounds anemic. I think it sounds pleasant. I like the power delivery of the engine. I think Yamaha has done a good job of transitions on and off throttle much better in sport mode than it used to be. I compare that to the Ducati, which does not have a really solid neutral throttle space. It's hard to hold neutral throttle, and it's always hunting into deceleration, which can upset your line mid-corner and stuff like that. But back to the Super Tenere. Troy, you were one of the people that didn't like it.
Correct.
Yeah, so I've seen you here looking at me going, why is he saying nice things about this bike? Because I really have enjoyed it. The bags are huge, which is one of the reasons I took it. What are your beefs?
I think for me, the Super Tenere comes in at a spot of disinterest for me because the past few years, Yamaha has just produced knockout after knockout after knockout, and then the Super Tenere comes on the scene, and I'm sorry, I don't like this motorcycle. It's heavy, we've all established that.
It feels heavy.
It feels
it's not
heavy. On the scale, it's not so heavy, but it feels heavy. That engine, it sounds like it has the worst valve knock I've ever heard in my life. You know, shouldn't sound like that. Granted, I will give you the fact that when you're standing on the side of the road and the bike comes by you, it sounds pretty good. But when you're sitting on it and riding along, it doesn't sound very inspiring to me. The power is decent, but it's nothing that's gonna wow me over the rest of these motorcycles here. Yeah, as the sum of its parts, it's okay, but just that weight and where it's placed really makes this motorcycle tank in my rankings.
Another thing that I noticed about the Super Tenere was that it's very bulbous. Like clearly like in the tank area and like the side shrouds and whatnot, but also on the back side here, which you can't see where the exhaust comes out, it really doesn't give your legs a lot of room to kind of maneuver around on. And then similarly on the other side, right behind the foot peg is the center stand. So it really, for a bike that you're gonna ride off road, it just doesn't inspire very much confidence in being able to kind of manhandle it and dance around on the thing. But even in sportier riding, you know, if you want to stand up a little bit, you're kind of limited in the range of motion that you have. And for an $18,000 motorcycle, I thought that maybe there could have been a few more refinements in certain areas. The Yamaha just unfortunately feels a little cheap for what you're spending compared to the other bikes.
Brent brings up a good point about bulbous, heavy, and weight distribution. We all joke that the GS, when it's behind you in the mirrors, looks like a giant RV coming at you. It's the heaviest bike here at 642 pounds, and yet it does not feel that heavy at all. It glides down the road with ease. You can toss it into turns, no problem. The bars are wide. The bike does not feel anywhere near that 642 pounds. Me personally, I love that boxer engine. I love anything BMW puts that boxer engine into. There's a reason why that GS is the standard bearer in this class. It is just so damn good. And this one right here is completely lives up to that example.
Low speed maneuverability for the GS. You'd never ever guess it weighs as much as it does. In parking lots, I saw Brent doing figure eights on the GS today on a 2-lane road, just pitching it from side to side to side.
Yeah, it really, I mean, the BMW is just, it's a pleasure to ride. I mean, all these bikes are, truthfully. If you're putting any sort of mileage on a bike, if you're doing some real touring, I would choose that over any cruiser or bagger. I mean, hands down. That bike is loaded with creature comforts, and the performance is fantastic too. And to speak to Scott's point about the telelever front end, I mean, holy cow. You know, when you really want to charge a corner and get in there fast and, you know, get on the brakes hard, the thing just stays level, and you can really, I don't know, you can rail the corner that much faster. It feels like, you know, getting back on the gas, it's not, there's no weight shift or nothing, and it's just really nice to ride. And the TFT dash on it, like Scott said, is just beautiful to look at.
The last point I'll make about the BMW, it's really minor but really makes me happy, is how well that quick shifter works. When you're banging through the gears going up, it just sounds boom, 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 and it just makes you feel alive. It's even cooler when you're downshifting because it rev matches perfectly every time with a quick little brah, brah. And you feel like you're racing, and I don't know, I feel special when I hear that motor rev matching every time. Even down in the first gear, it'll rev match there too and get you exactly where you need to be, which is hard to do sometimes on a lot of quick shifters from that second to first gear change. That BMW is so good. It's so good.
It's a stark contrast to the Ducati's quick shifter.
Go on.
Which going up is super, super smooth, but I found it to be notchy. It required a lot of pressure to go down, and I didn't think it always matched the revs as nicely, as precisely as the BMW did.
I think that when you talk about the BMW, it's a good segue to go to the Triumph 1200 XCA, because all these bikes bring their own flavor and character to the party, but it's pretty clear that Triumph has targeted BMW in a big way with this bike. And, you know, I think it matches it pretty closely in price. Triumph is bringing, you know, their own signature triple power into this class. And I think they've done a real good job with it, especially its road manners. But there were some things that I noticed about this bike, and I wanted to hear what you guys think as well, because I noticed that it was one bike that, like whereas the BMW and you let the clutch out, the weight disappears. That's fairly true on the Triumph until you start to slow down and try and make a corner with it. You know, especially maybe in a little bit of a gravel situation, or you know, there's stuff on the road like we encountered up here. It feels really heavy to me, and also, you know, there were some issues with shifting for me. You know, it's a great bike, but I think if I'm looking at a Triumph for this class, I'm looking down market at the 800 XCA because I have a lot of experience with that bike. Triumph makes fantastic adventure touring bikes. This one's a really good one, but I just wonder what you think about it compared to, you know, some of the other bikes here.
Yeah, Scott, I agree with you for the most part. The Triumph is the second heaviest bike here, 632 pounds with a full tank of gas, just 10 pounds less than the BMW, but the Triumph and the BMW couldn't be any more different in terms of how they carry their weight. You feel it on the Triumph, especially under braking, but anywhere you go, really. The BMW, it just disappears, like you said.
Scott mentioned what a great bike the Triumph was for gobbling up miles. And the one drawback it has for long distance travel is it generates a lot of heat up through the tank area. You can feel it radiating up from between your legs and coming up your body. And when you're traveling through the desert with 100+ temperatures, that's not a good thing.
So I think with this class of motorcycles, you know, you've got a lot of different bikes here, but one thing's pretty apparent, and it's the reason we're doing this test. Well, not the full reason we're doing this test in 2 parts, but part of the reason we're doing this test in 2 parts. You know, there are bikes here that are amazing street bikes. The Triumph Tiger, I've done 1,000 miles on that with my wife on the back. The heat is an issue on the Triumph coming up on your chest, on your arms. You can really feel that. But, you know, the GS, the Triumph, and the Ducati are all great street bikes. And, you know, you got these 2 touring bikes, and this is very much the sport bike, the Ducati. It rails in the canyons, it's got the most horsepower, it's got the most torque. It's not great off-road, but it's a fantastic touring motorcycle, especially if you're performance driven and, you know, that's what you're looking for. It's fantastic, especially this year with the new 1260. It's super torquey. First and second gear are a little lurchy, like Evans was saying, with the throttle. Once you're into third, it's pretty well smoothed out.
One of the reasons why we invited my friend John here for this test is he is in the adventure touring market. He is actively shopping for an adventure touring bike, and you know, this is something that he really enjoys. He's got a big ride coming up in September in Colorado, I believe. And so maybe you can tell us a couple things about what you learned about the bike you're looking at and the rest of the class.
Sure, absolutely. As the amateur with this group of professionals here, I feel like it was a great opportunity for me to ride. So one things I wanted to say about the Ducati, it was the wild child for me. It was ripping fast. It was a lot of fun. I loved the shifter. You know, I had a great time on the Tenere. I thought it was a great bike. I rode it pretty extensively. The Triumph did feel pretty heavy, but I enjoyed the pitch more than any other bike. I thought it sounded great. KTM, ripping fast, also really fun bike. The surprise for me, the V-Strom, I love that bike. It was really fun. Like Evan said, it didn't do anything really well, but it did everything really strong. But I'll tell you what, I've been shopping for a R1200GS Adventure, and I spent a lot of time on that red bike back there, and I think this ride pretty much sealed the deal for me. I love the GS. I love that it's a heavy bike, but it doesn't feel it. I was able to do things on it in the dirt that really blew me away, how competent it was, and I really can't wait to put a set of knobbies on it and ride the thing. So, thanks guys.
Well, John, thank you for your input. It's really great to have you along with us for this ride, which gets us to the meat and potatoes of why we're here. Which one would we actually pick were it our own money? Brent, one bike out of all these for the road, what is it?
If we're talking road only, I would go with I'd be with John. I would go with the R1200GS. It just did everything really well, competently. And yeah, if I were to spend my own money, that'd be the one.
Scott?
I think I can see where this is going. If I were to pick only a road bike out of this group of really fantastic adventure touring bikes, it would be the BMW. It's just got a just a flawless fluidity about it when you're going down the road. It handles great, makes great power, shifts great, brakes great, and it hides all that weight. It's a really fantastic motorcycle. It would be the BMW for me.
John, you've already mentioned what you would pick. We'll go past you. Ryan, what about you?
So as an owner of the previous version of that bike, the 1190, it pains me to say, you know, I picked the 1190 because I wanted a little bit of both, but if you know, we're talking purely street here, I would probably pick the GS as well.
I really, really, really hate to go with everyone else. But if you're talking about polish and features and just doing it all on the street, from low-speed maneuvers to around town to hauling ass up in the mountains, there's a reason why the BMW has been the OG adventure tourer for so long.
You should call it the R1200GS.
Well, for me, I think I might break from the group a little bit. I'm gonna qualify this. If I had to spend 20 grand or over, GS, no question. If I were to spend under 20 grand, I'm picking the V-Strom, no question. That V-Strom is an absolute knockout for the price, and the aftermarket for it is enormous. So I copped out, I picked two bikes, but that's why I went last. This is only part A of this test. You know, adventure bikes obviously are not meant to strictly be on the road. They're meant to have an adventure, go off-road, play in the dirt. So we're gonna bring you a part B as well. Putting proper tires on these bikes, getting proper riders to put them through their paces. We'll have probably an entirely different set of answers for you as to what bike our riders would pick. So for that, stay tuned to Motorcycle.com. Go to the website, read our written story about what we think of these 7 bikes as road bikes. Again, stay tuned for part B, and we'll see you later.